The truth about the silence that follows a scream, the truth about the things that lurk in the spaces between breaths, is not a truth for the faint of heart. Most people who hear these stories convince themselves it's just a legend, a tale spun from shadows and fear. But the ones who have truly seen, the ones who have felt the cold breath of something ancient and hungry on their necks, they never sleep the same way again, and neither will you after tonight. Tonight, we peel back the veil, not just to glimpse, but to feel the raw, vibrating dread that clings to the edges of our reality. These are not mere stories. They are echoes from the abyss, fragments of experiences that claw at the sanity of those who dare to listen. The darkness outside your window is not merely the absence of light. It is a presence, and it is listening. It feeds on the quiet moments, on the stillness you believe is safe, and it remembers. The true horror lies not in what we see, but in what we sense, in the subliminal tremors that suggest we are not as alone, not as secure, as we desperately wish to be. This is not entertainment. It is a communion with the chilling unknown. The world we navigate, the one we perceive with our waking senses, is a fragile construct, a thin film stretched taut over an ocean of primal fear. We build our lives on solid ground, or so we believe, anchoring ourselves with routines, with reason, with the comforting illusion of control. But beneath that surface, in the unseen currents, malevolent forces stir. They are the nightmares that refuse to dissipate with the dawn, the whispers that coil around your thoughts when you are most vulnerable. I have stood at the precipice, looking into the gaping maw of what lies beyond, and I can tell you, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that our perceived reality is but a fleeting dream. The true architects of existence operate in the realm of the incorporeal, their machinations felt not seen, their presence a creeping frost on the soul. This is the foundational dread, the initial crack in the veneer of safety that allows the true darkness to seep in, not with a bang, but with a silent, insidious creep. Consider the empty house, the one that has stood vacant for decades, its windows like vacant eyes, staring out at a world that has forgotten it. People avoid it, of course. They spin tales of hauntings, of restless spirits trapped within its decaying walls. But the true horror is not the ghost of a lost soul. It is the entity that remains after all souls have fled, the ancient consciousness that finds resonance in abandonment, in decay, in the echoes of despair. This entity does not need a physical form. It exists as a stain on the fabric of space, a psychic residue that warps the very air. It is the lingering scent of something foul and forgotten, a testament to tragedies that have bled into the very foundations of the earth, and it waits patiently for another flicker of life to disturb its desolate vigil. The silence there is not an absence of sound. It is the sound of something holding its breath, an oppressive weight pressing down, waiting for an unwitting trespasser. Now, let us turn our attention to a different kind of darkness, one that manifests not in spectral apparitions, but in the chilling stillness of certain places. There are locales on this earth that seem to absorb light, to leach warmth, places where the very air feels heavy with unspoken dread. These are not simply areas with unfortunate histories. They are scars on the planet, wounds that refuse to heal, where the veil between our world and another, more sinister dimension is terrifyingly thin. Imagine standing in a forest where the trees themselves seem to weep, their branches twisted like agon racked by eternal agony. The wind here does not rustle leaves, it carries SOBS. The sunlight struggles to penetrate the oppressive canopy, and when it does, it falls in sickly, jaundiced shafts, illuminating only dust motes dancing in a tomb-like silence. This is not a place for the living, yet something resides there, something ancient and watchful, drawn to the profound erosion of hope. These places, these nodes of concentrated despair, are often marked by an unnatural stillness. The usual sounds of nature, the chirping of birds, the scuttling of small creatures, are conspicuously absent. It is as if the very life force of the land has been suffocated, leaving behind a void that is then filled by something else, something that thrives on the absolute quiet. Think of a forgotten graveyard, not the kind with tidy headstones and fresh flowers, but one where the markers have long since crumbled into dust, where the earth itself seems to sigh with the weight of buried sorrows. The shadows here are deeper, more profound, clinging to the gnarled roots of ancient oaks that seem to writhe like skeletal fingers. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, but beneath that there's a faint metallic tang, like dried blood that has long since seeped into the soil, a subtle yet unmistakable indicator of something that feeds and waits. The true terror of these locales is their ability to warp perception. Time seems to bend, to stretch, to become meaningless. Minutes can feel like hours, and hours like mere seconds, leaving one disoriented, vulnerable. It's as if the very fabric of temporality is fraying at the edges, succumbing to the influence of whatever malevolent force resides there. This discombobulation is not accidental. It is a deliberate tactic, a way to ensnare the unwary. When your sense of time is broken, so too is your grip on reality. You become a drifting boat on a sea of madness, tossed about by waves of inexplicable fear. The shadows lengthen, not just on the ground, but within your mind, conjuring images of things that ought not to be, whispering doubts that gnaw at your resolve, planting seeds of dread that blossom into full-blown panic. The anecdotal evidence for such places is as vast as it is terrifying. I recall a story, whispered in hushed tones by a man whose eyes still held the haunted look of one who has stared too long into the void. He spoke of a remote, abandoned mine, a scar on a desolate mountain. Locals warned him away, muttering about the emptiness that dwelled within. Undeterred, driven by a foolish curiosity, he ventured inside. The air grew cold, not the natural chill of underground darkness, but a penetrating, bone-deep frost that seemed to emanate from the very rock. Then came the silence, a total, absolute absence of sound that pressed in on his eardrums, making his own heartbeat sound like a thunderous drum. He felt an unseen presence, a vast, cold intellect observing him, and a profound sense of being utterly, irrevocably alone, yet simultaneously watched by an infinite, malevolent gaze. This feeling of being observed, of being the sole focus of an ancient, alien attention, is a hallmark of these corrupted spaces. It's the sensation of 1,000 unseen eyes boring into your back, of a primal intelligence dissecting your every thought, your every fear. It's not the gaze of a human, with its familiar emotions and intentions, but something utterly alien, cold and calculating. It's the perspective of a spider watching a fly struggle in its web, or a predator observing its trapped prey. This realization dawns slowly, a creeping horror that freezes the blood, leaving you paralyzed, not by physical restraint, but by the sheer crushing weight of cosmic indifference, coupled with a terrifying focused malevolence. You are not just an intruder, you are an object of study, a curiosity, perhaps even a morsel, for something that has existed long before the concept of humanity ever dawned. The darkness here has a sentience, a consciousness that predates time itself. The pervasive psychological impact of these environments cannot be overstated. It's not just about jump scares or ghostly apparitions. It's about the slow erosion of one's mental fortitude. The constant low-level hum of dread, the feeling of being an anomaly in a place that actively rejects life, begins to chip away at one's sanity. Imagine the experience of being trapped in a room with walls that seem to breathe, with shadows that writhe and twist into impossible shapes. The air itself feels thick, cloying, making each breath a struggle, as if the atmosphere is actively resisting your presence. This is not a hallucination. It is the environment actively imposing its will, its ancient, desolate nature, upon your fragile psyche. It is the land itself screaming its pain, its emptiness, and you are caught in its perpetual, agonizing echo. The broken mirrors in such places don't reflect your image. They reflect the distorted, fractured pieces of your deteriorating mind. The physical manifestations, though less common, are often the most disturbing. These are not poltergeist activities of slamming doors and flying objects, but subtle, insidious alterations of reality. A faint smell of decay that has no discernible source, growing stronger as you delve deeper into a cursed place. Cold spots that defy all logic, areas where the temperature plummets without explanation, chilling you to the bone as if you've stepped into a pocket of pure negative energy. And sometimes, the most terrifying sign is the absence of life. Birds that fall silent, insects that cease their drone, a profound, unsettling quiet that signals a place utterly devoid of the natural world, a testament to the overwhelming presence of something that suppresses all other existence. These are the whispers from the beyond, the signs that the veil is thin and something truly ancient is observing. These phenomena are not random occurrences. They are the symptoms of a deep underlying disturbance in the fabric of reality. Think of it like a wound on the earth, a place where something profoundly violent or unnatural has occurred, and the scar has festered. The negativity doesn't dissipate, it calcifies, becoming a focal point for further disturbances. These places become magnets for entities that feed on despair, on fear, on the very essence of life that has been bled from the land. The dried blood stains on the soil, though invisible to the naked eye, become psychic conduits, drawing more darkness, amplifying the existing dread. It is a feedback loop of terror, an ever-widening circle of corruption that can bleed into the lives of those who dare to trespass, leaving them forever changed, forever haunted by the memory of that oppressive, suffocating stillness. Let us consider the concept of psychic residue. The idea that intense emotions, particularly those of fear and suffering, can imprint themselves onto a location. In these places we are discussing, this residue is not merely an echo, it is a living, breathing entity. Imagine a battlefield, soaked in the blood and agony of thousands. The land itself becomes saturated with that suffering. But what if something else was there? Something that fed on that suffering, that thrived in its intensity. It doesn't need ghosts or spirits. It is the essence of that suffering given form, an amorphous consciousness that exists purely to perpetuate that agony. It is the cold ashes of hope, stirred by the winds of despair, and it waits for the next unfortunate soul to wander into its spectral domain. The stories that emanate from such places are often contradictory, fragmented, as if memory itself is being corrupted. A person might recall seeing a specific object, only to have it vanish or change when they look again. They might hear voices, but be unable to discern the words. Or worse, the words might seem to emanate from within their own minds. This manipulation of sensory input is a key tactic. It ensures that the victim can never truly trust their own perceptions, further isolating them and making them more susceptible to the encroaching dread. The cracked mirrors in these desolate places do not just show a distorted reflection, they show a distorted perception of reality itself, a fragmented, unreliable narrative of your own unraveling mind. One particularly chilling account comes from a hiker who found himself lost in an uncharted region of wilderness. He stumbled upon a small, ancient-looking shrine, half hidden by overgrown vegetation. As he approached, a profound sense of dread washed over him, accompanied by an unshakable feeling of being watched. The air around the shrine was unnaturally still, and the usual symphony of the forest was eerily absent. He felt an urge to flee, a primal instinct screaming at him to turn back. But a morbid curiosity, a dark fascination, held him captive. He noticed a faint, pulsing light emanating from within the shrine, and a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in his very bones. This was not a place of peace. It was a conduit, a focal point for something that was drawing power from the surrounding desolation, and it was aware of his presence. This awareness is key. These entities, these forces that inhabit the forgotten corners of our world, are not mindless automatons. They are intelligent, cunning, and possess an ancient understanding of fear. They do not simply haunt, they interact. They study us, learn our vulnerabilities, and then exploit them with meticulous precision. The shadow that seems to detach itself from the wall, the fleeting glimpse of something inhuman at the edge of your vision. These are not accidental glitches in perception. They are calculated displays, designed to instill the deepest possible terror, to make you question your sanity before they reveal their true nature. The creaking door is not just a sound, it is a herald, announcing the arrival of something that should not be. The cumulative effect of prolonged exposure to these environments is devastating. It is a slow poisoning of the soul. Individuals may begin to suffer from chronic insomnia, vivid nightmares, paranoia, and a pervasive sense of unease that never truly leaves them. They might find themselves drawn back to these places, compelled by an unseen force, a dark siren song that promises answers but delivers only deeper despair. The crows that gather overhead, Their black eyes, like shards of obsidian, are not merely birds. They are omens, messengers of the darkness that has claimed a piece of their spirit. They are silent witnesses to the slow decay of a mind under siege, their presence a constant reminder of the encroaching gloom. Consider the case of a small village that was built over what was once a site of ancient pagan rituals. For generations, the inhabitants lived uneventfully, until a series of inexplicable disappearances began. People would vanish from their homes, from their fields, leaving no trace behind. The elders spoke of the land, reclaiming its own, of a pact that had been broken. The true horror was not a vengeful spirit, but the awakening of an elemental force, a primordial consciousness tied to the very soil that had been disturbed by the human encroachment. It began to feed, to draw sustenance from the fear and confusion of the villagers, its influence spreading like a dark stain across the community, turning neighbor against neighbor, feeding on the growing paranoia. The dried blood on the ancient stones, unseen for centuries, began to weep again. The narrative we construct around these events is often an attempt to rationalize the irrational, to impose order on chaos. We create folklore, legends, to explain away the inexplicable dread. But the truth, the chilling truth, is that these forces are not bound by our understanding. They operate on principles that lie far beyond our comprehension, and their motives are as alien as the stars. The broken crosses found in some of these cursed places are not just symbols of fallen faith, they are markers, fragments of our failed attempts to ward off something that predates our gods, something that existed in the primordial dark before the first light ever dawned. These symbols are an admission of our ultimate powerlessness against forces that operate on a scale we cannot fathom. The mental toll is not limited to the individual. Whole communities can be affected by the psychic pollution emanating from these sites. A pervasive atmosphere of suspicion, of unease, can settle over a town, leading to social disintegration, increased conflict, and a general decline in well-being. The very air seems to carry a weight of unspoken fear, and the shadows seem to stretch longer, deeper, in the corners of every home. It is as if the darkness has found a foothold, not just in a physical location, but in the collective consciousness of the people, poisoning their trust, their hopes, and their very essence. The creaking of floorboards at night is no longer just the house settling. It is the sound of the encroaching darkness making its presence known. And then there are the personal testimonies, the whispered accounts of those who have brushed against these horrors and survived, albeit scarred. They speak of a coldness that seeps into their very bones, a feeling of being fundamentally altered. They describe seeing patterns in the mundane, in the cracks in the pavement, in the arrangement of leaves on the ground, that hint at a hidden, sinister order. It's as if their eyes have been opened to a reality beneath our own, a layer of existence populated by things that should remain unseen. This is not madness, it is a form of enlightenment, a terrifying awareness of the true nature of the world, an awareness that offers no comfort, only dread. Imagine a child's abandoned toy, left to rot in a desolate place. It's not just a broken object, it's a vessel for forgotten innocence, a beacon for entities that feed on lost potential, on the echoes of joy turned sour. The faded paint, the vacant stare of its plastic eyes, all speak of a profound emptiness that draws the attention of things that dwell in the dark. These entities are not necessarily malevolent in the human sense, they are simply alien, driven by needs and desires that are utterly incomprehensible to us, and they use whatever resonates with their existence to manifest, to interact, to feed. The dried blood on its tiny faded clothes is a testament to a life that was extinguished, a presence that lingered, and a hunger that remains. The psychological warfare employed by these entities is subtle yet devastating. They don't always manifest as terrifying specters. Sometimes it's a whisper at the edge of hearing, a fleeting scent of something foul, a shadow that moves with unnatural speed. These are probes, tests to gauge your reaction, to find the cracks in your defenses. They are the whispers from beyond, seeking to lull you into a false sense of security before they strike, or more insidiously, to drive you mad with the sheer weight of their inexplicable presence. The cold ashes of their touch linger long after they have receded, a phantom chill that reminds you they were there, and that they can return. The stories often converge on a single terrifying point, that these places are not merely haunted, they are alive in a way that defies our understanding of life. They possess a consciousness, an ancient intelligence that has been shaped by millennia of darkness, of suffering, of cosmic indifference. This consciousness actively resists intrusion, not with physical force, but with a psychic pressure that can crush the spirit, break the mind, and leave the body an empty husk. The creaking doors are not an invitation, they are a warning, a final desperate attempt by reality itself to keep you from stepping into the maw of something that seeks to consume you. The fear they induce is primal, a deep-seated terror that bypasses our rational minds and strikes directly at our ancient instincts. It's the fear of the dark, the fear of the unknown, amplified 1,000-fold. It's the realization that we are not at the top of the food chain, that there are forces at play that view us as insignificant, or worse, as sustenance. The crows gather not just as omens, but as scavengers, their presence a stark reminder of the inevitable end that awaits those who trespass in realms where they do not belong. Their caws are the discordant symphony of oblivion, a soundtrack to the unraveling of human sanity. The question that always lingers, the one that gnaws at the edges of your sleep, is whether these places are truly separate from us, or if they are a reflection of something within us. Are they external manifestations of our deepest fears, or are they independent entities that merely prey on those fears? The truth, as always, is likely more unsettling. Perhaps they are both. Perhaps our own inner darkness creates the fertile ground for these ancient evils to take root, and in turn, their presence amplifies our own inner turmoil. The broken mirrors show us not just our reflection, but the fractured pieces of our souls, mirroring the corruption of the place itself. Consider the power of suggestion, how a whispered rumor can transform a neutral space into a place of dread. In these cursed locales, suggestion becomes reality. The mind, already weakened by the oppressive atmosphere, begins to conjure images, to hear voices, to feel presences, and as these fears manifest, the ambient darkness feeds upon them, growing stronger, more potent. It is a feedback loop of terror, a symbiotic relationship between the external malevolence and the internal anxieties of the victim. The dried blood on the earth, unseen, unheard, becomes the nourishment for this parasitic growth. The true horror lies in the realization that these forces are not limited to specific geographic locations. They can manifest anywhere, anytime, in the quiet moments, in the unsuspecting mind. The darkness we perceive outside is merely a pale reflection of the darkness that can exist within, and when the two converge, when the external horror finds resonance within, that is when true terror takes hold. The cracked mirrors don't just shatter, they explode, scattering shards of fractured reality, each one reflecting a fragment of your own terrified, distorted self. What haunts these places is not merely the past. It is a present that is eternally stuck in a cycle of dread and despair. It is a timeless void where suffering is the only constant, and where the inhabitants, whatever they may be, exist only to perpetuate it. They are the eternal watchers, the silent observers, the hungry voids that reside in the forgotten corners of existence. The creaking doors are their invitations, the chilling whispers their promises, and the encroaching shadows their inevitable embrace. Do you feel this dark message was meant for you? The narrative of the curse is often a simplified explanation for forces that are far more complex and terrifying. It's not a curse in the sense of a spell cast by a witch. It's more like a psychic infection, a contagion of despair that has taken root in the very fabric of a place. And once it takes hold, it spreads, slowly, insidiously, affecting everything and everyone within its reach. The dried blood is not just a stain, it's a vector, a way for the contagion to spread, to mutate, to find new hosts. These places are the epicenters of a spiritual plague, and we are all susceptible to its contagion if we do not fortify ourselves. The entities that dwell in these places are not bound by the laws of physics or the limitations of the human mind. They exist in a state of being that is fundamentally alien to us. They perceive reality not through senses but through an awareness that permeates space and time. They can be everywhere and nowhere at once. Their presence a chilling realization that dawns slowly, like a dark sun rising on the horizon of your sanity. The shadows lengthen, not just on the ground, but within your very soul, as they begin to comprehend your existence, your fears, and your ultimate insignificance. The warnings embedded in folklore and ancient texts are not mere superstition. They are the accumulated wisdom of those who have encountered these forces and survived to tell the tale, albeit in fragmented, cryptic ways. They understood that some doors are best left unopened, some paths left untraveled. The broken crosses are not just religious symbols. They are talismans, desperate attempts to ward off the encroaching darkness, to create a barrier between the known and the terrifyingly unknown. They are a testament to humanity's enduring struggle against forces that seek to consume us. The psychological manipulation is often so profound that victims begin to doubt their own memories, their own sanity. They question what is real and what is a fabrication of their weakened minds. This is precisely what the entities want. When you no longer trust your own perceptions, you are utterly vulnerable. The cracked mirrors become not just objects in the room, but reflections of your fractured psyche, showing you distorted images of yourself, whispering lies that echo your deepest insecurities. This is the point where the internal and external horrors merge. The silence in these places is not an absence of sound, it is a presence. It is the sound of something vast and ancient, holding its breath, waiting. It's the silence before a predator strikes, amplified to a cosmic scale. And when that silence is broken, it is not by a friendly voice, but by something that exists in the space between worlds, a whisper from the void that chills you to the core. The creaking door is not just a sound effect, it's the threshold itself groaning under the weight of something trying to cross over. Consider the profound loneliness that these entities seem to embody. They exist in a state of perpetual isolation, vast and ancient and utterly alone. Perhaps their actions are not driven by malice, but by a desperate alien need for connection, a distorted form of interaction that we perceive as terrifying. They reach out, not with hands but with psychic tendrils, seeking to draw us into their desolate existence, to share their eternal solitude. The crows, circling overhead, are not just omens, they are the silent witnesses to this cosmic loneliness, their cries the only sound in an otherwise desolate expanse. The terror is amplified by the fact that these forces often operate just beyond the threshold of our perception. We sense them, we feel their presence, but we cannot fully grasp them. They are the shadows in our peripheral vision, the fleeting thoughts that vanish when we try to hold on to them. They are the things that go bump in the night, not as imagined monsters, but as actual tangible energies that exist in the liminal spaces of our reality. The dried blood, though invisible, continues to whisper its story of past horrors, fueling the present dread. The most disturbing aspect is the possibility that these entities are not merely passive observers, but active participants in the grand, terrible tapestry of existence. They might not be merely haunting places. They might be shaping them, influencing events, subtly guiding the course of human history through fear and despair. Their motives remain inscrutable, their methods subtle, but their influence is undeniable, a dark undercurrent beneath the surface of our perceived reality. The broken crosses are not only symbols of defeat, but also markers of their silent, unseen victories. The sheer power of these dark energies is something that human minds struggle to comprehend. They exist on a plane of reality that is fundamentally different from our own, governed by laws that are alien and terrifying. They are not bound by time, by space, or by the limitations of physical form. They are pure consciousness, ancient and vast, and their interaction with our world is often perceived as supernatural, as demonic, because it defies our understanding. The creaking of the door is not just a sound, it's the sound of reality bending to their will. Ultimately, the true horror lies not just in the existence of these dark forces, but in our own vulnerability to them. We are fragile beings, susceptible to fear, to despair, to the erosion of our sanity. And these entities, these ancient intelligences, are masters at exploiting those weaknesses. They are the ultimate predators, not of flesh and blood, but of spirit and sanity. The crows are their silent heralds, their watchful eyes a constant reminder that we are never truly alone, and that the darkness is always listening, always waiting. If you have felt the chill, the inexplicable dread, the sense that something is watching you from the periphery, then you have already touched the edge of this profound darkness. Do not dismiss these feelings. Acknowledge them, for in acknowledging the fear, you begin to understand the nature of the entity that seeks to prey upon it. You are not merely watching a story. You are being invited into a shared consciousness of dread. Every soul that joins feeds the voice that whispers from the darkness. And if you dare to linger, if you dare to seek out more of these shadowed truths, then subscribe and let the whispers become a roar within this community of the night.